So the agenda for today's session is to first understand the techniques using which you can approximate your answers. We will also understand the difference between approximation and guessing. There's a very thin line between smart approximation and just making a wild guess. If you're somebody who belongs to the second category, I'll try my best to pull you into the first category by showing you what is the difference between approximation and wild guessing, which is very important. Many times you might have heard that on the GMAT, if you don't know the answer, even after 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, you have to guess. Now that guess cannot be a wild guess. It has to be a logical, educated guess. And that's where approximation will help you. And of course, approximation will definitely help you save time and effort on not only on direct questions, but also on many questions in problem solving, where although the question doesn't expect you to estimate, it doesn't mention it directly, you can still approximate and save time. So we'll discuss that point also. In which questions can we approximate and save time and effort? So with this, let's start off with a question, a warm-up question kind of sorts. I want all of you to solve this. I'll give you 1 minute time, which I feel is enough for this. After you're done with that 1 minute, if you've got an answer, hold on to your answer. Don't post it in the chat box till I ask you to do so. Okay, 1 minute starts now. Okay, I see a Charlie. Got it. Other answers, please. I see a Bravo. Delta, that's interesting. I got all. Let me see if I get a Alpha and an Echo. Okay, Bravo. Right. Charlie. All right. First things first, people, don't be shy. Try to communicate with everyone else. Right now, most of you are just sending in your answers to me. So go to the chat box and click on all panelists and attendees. Right now, no one else can see your messages, so they don't get a context. Okay, all right. So when it comes to fractions and decimals, I'll just shift to a white screen where I can write more freely. You have to understand that you can convert decimals to fractions and fractions to decimals. Both are, interconvertible. So for example, if I have a number like 0.57, I know 0.57 will be 57 by 100. So if there are two significant digits, your denominator will be 10 to the power of 2. And your numerator will be the same two significant digits, so 57 by 100. If you can simplify this, you can do so. Now I think we can't simplify this. So for example, if I have a 0.84, I know this is 84 divided by 100, and I know I can simplify this. 4 2s are 8, 4 1s are 4, and 100 is 4 2s are 4 5s are. So I know 0.84 is 21 by 25. So you'll have to know this technique of converting from decimals to fractions and fractions to decimals. These are terminating decimals. So terminating decimals are decimals that terminate somewhere, they end somewhere. You can also convert recurring decimals to fractions. So for example, if you have a 0.272727 ... all that you have to do is you have to express this as 0.27 bar because this is a recurring decimal. Now, how do you convert this 0.27 bar to a fraction? Very simple. Now, the numerator will be the same two digits, 27 will be the numerator, but now, because it's a recurring decimal, your denominator will be 99. Some of you are like, why is it 99? the number of nines in the denominator will depend on how many digits are recurring. So there are two different digits that are recurring here. So you'll have two nines. Okay. So we simplify this. 9 threes are 27. 9 11s are 99. We can't simplify this any further. So we can say 0.27 bar is equal to 3 by 11. Let's take another example. Maybe we take 0.313, 313, 313, dot, dot, dot. So this becomes 0.313 bar, or let's take a simpler one. Instead of just taking more than two digits, let's take a 0.31, 31, 31, 31, dot, 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 which is nothing but 0.31 bar, which becomes 31 in the numerator because there are two digits. There'll be two nines. 31 by 99 is the final version of 0.3131 bar. Okay, so this is how you convert a recurring decimal to a fraction. Converting a terminating decimal to a fraction is very easy. Now, of course, converting a fraction to a decimal, I think, is a very easy task for any of you. You have something like 3 by 8. You know, you just have to divide 3 by 8, the normal division. You can't divide 3 by 8, so you introduce a decimal. 30.3, 24, 6. 8 sevens are 56, and 4 is the remainder, 45.375. And because this is easy, you're expected to remember some of these values. So 3 by 8 is 0.375, or 1 by 4 is 0.25. Or let's say 3 by 4 is 0.75. Okay. So this is one of the beginning activities that you need to do, preparatory work that you need to do if you want to do well in approximation based questions. Your knowledge of fractions and decimals and conversion from one to another should be very good. Now getting back to the problem. So here I can write 0.513. I will write it as 513 by 1000. I will write 0.488 as 488 by 1000. I'll not simplify it. I'll just keep it like this, just to keep it simple. So this is 942 by 1000. 0.684 will be 684 by 1000. 0.314 is 314 by 1000. 0.183 is 183 by 1000. Now, if I had to round this off, if I have to approximate this, 0.513, a lot of you would round it off to 0.5, right? There's nothing wrong with that. So 0.5, 0.488. Some of you will be confused with a 0.488. Should I round it off to 0.5? Should I round it off to 0.4? That is where this will help you. This method will help you. 488, as you understand, is closer to 500. It is much farther away from 400, right? So therefore, you can approximate the 0.488 to be a 0.5, right? Next, 0.942, 942 is closer to 900, so we can approximate it to be 0.9. Some of you might want to say, okay, I want to approximate it to 0.95. That is okay with me. But as of now, I'm just approximating it to 0.9 to keep things simple. This one, I will approximate it to be 0.7 because this would be 700. The other one would be 0.3 and the other one would be 0.2. Now it becomes simple. I know 0.5 is 5 by 10, 5 by 10, 9 by 10, 7 by 10, 3 by 10, 2 by 10. So I know that 10 will get cancelled. So this becomes 5 into 5 into 9, right? Upon 7 into 3 into 2. Now, 5 into 5 into 9, right, is 25 into 9 up to 25. This is approximately, this is 42. And remember, this is approximately 5.5. And also remember that we have reduced this number by a fair margin. 942, we have made it as 900. So therefore, this value that we got is actually smaller. It should be a little bigger. Therefore, the answer here is 6. So in approximation, when you're doing approximation, you should never forget the kind of approximations you made. Did you reduce it? Did you increase it? By how much did it increase? Did you increase it by a small margin? It's okay. But if you increased or decreased it by a large margin, then you'll have to account for it in the final answer. All right. So the correct answer here is C for Charlie. So this is very similar to an official question that came up on the test long ago. I picked this up from GMAT Club because I felt this was a good way of starting off the approximation bit, where I could tell you, okay, how fractions and decimals hold a lot of importance in terms of, cutting down the time taken to solve a question. Are you sure you decreased the denominator by as much, Deepak? So do you think you have increased it? Do you think you have decreased the 0.684? Do you think you have decreased the 0.183? Think about it. Correct. That's the point. That's the point. Exactly. So you actually increase some values in the denominator. When you increase values in the denominator, what happens is your fraction's overall value comes down. So I will still, hold on to my argument that this 5.5 is actually smaller than what we should have got. Right? So understand, people, if you have a fraction, your denominator increases, the value decreases. Your denominator decreases, your value increases. Always keep this in mind. The denominator is very important. I'm not saying that the numerator is not important, but I will go to the extent of saying that the numerator is not as important as the denominator. Because in a fraction, the denominator will always represent the whole, whereas the numerator will always represent a part. Okay, always bear this in mind. So always focus on what is happening with the denominator. You can then focus on the numerator later. Okay, clear? Any other questions on this problem? It's hard to believe, right? I mean, it's hard to believe that a question like this could come up on the exam. I mean, there's nothing else in this, correct? There's no concept in this. You just have to calculate, right? And that is what GMAT is all about. Many times we think, okay, for the GMAT, we have to study complex formulas, concepts. Sometimes GMAT says, okay, look, if you have kept things simple, you will also get questions like these. Okay, let's try another question. So I'll give you 1 minute here again. Okay, that's a minute. You can post your answers now in the chat box. Okay, bravo. Interesting. Bravo again. I see that not a lot of you have changed your chat options to all panelists and attendees. Can you please do it now? Delta Echo. I'm just seeing if somebody would give me a alpha or a Charlie. Okay, all right. The answer here is all right. Let me maintain that little bit of suspense and shift to the whiteboard again. So if I try to express half as a percentage, people, what is half as a percentage? %50%, right? So if I want to convert a fraction to a percentage, what do I do? What do I have to do? I just have to take the fraction and multiply it with 100 to get a corresponding percentage value, right? So 1 by 4 would be 1 by 4 into 100, that is a 25%, right? So if I just work it out here, 1 by 2 would be a 50%. 1 by 3, what would 1 by 3 be? 1 by 3 would be a 33.33%. 1 by 5 would be a 20%. 1 by 7 would be a 14 point, let's say 3%. And 1 by 11 would be a 9.09%. Okay. Now, we could take 1 by 4. 1 by 4 is 25%. 1 by 6. 1 by 6 is exactly half of 1 by 3, so that would be 16.66%. 1 by 10 would be a 10%. 1 by 8. 1 by 8 is approximately half of 1 by 4, so that's 12.5%. 1 by 16 is a half of this, so 6.25%. Now, what else? 1 by 9 is something that is missing. 1 by 9 is 11.11%. I think we are left with a 1 by 13. So 1 by 13 is a 7.7%. Now, if you remember these percentage fraction equivalents, they will actually make your job much easier when it comes to comparing fractions. Right? Now, for example, if I ask you 5 by 6 and 6 by 7, which one is bigger? You'll be able to quickly work it out and say, okay, 5 by 6 is nothing but 5 times of 1 by 6, which is nothing but 5 times of 16.66. You'll be able to say, okay, 6 by 7 is 6 into 1 by 7. So that is 6 into 14.3. Now, 5 into 16.66 is 83.33%, whereas 6 into 14.3 is approximately about 85.8%. So when you know these fraction equivalent, fraction percentage equivalents, it makes a comparison very simple. 5 by 6 is less than 6 by 7. And it's not that you have to know everything. I mean, you just have to know some of these numbers. How many numbers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 values. Nothing more, nothing less. Right? Because if you know this much, you'll be able to work out the others. So for example, if I ask you what is 3 by 4, 3 by 4 is nothing but 3 times of 1 by 4, that is 75%. If I ask you what is 3 by 8, 3 by 8 would be a 3 multiplied by 1 by 8, which is 3 into 12.5, 37.5%. I could ask you, okay, what is 4 by 11? 4 by 11 would be 4 multiplied by a 1 by 11, that is 4 into 9.09, that is 36.36%. On the other hand, if I ask you what is 5 by 9, 5 by 9 would be 5 into 1 by 9, that is 5 into 1 by 9 is a 55.55%. So had you known this percentage fraction equivalent table, this problem would have actually been a 1-minute problem. Which of the following fractions is closest to half? So the now problem now becomes, which are the fractions is closest to 50%? Now 4 by 7. 4 by 7 is 4 into 1 by 7, right? Which is 4 into 14.3, right? So 4 threes are 12, 4 fours are 16 plus 1, 17, 4 ones are 4, 57.2%. 5 by 9 is 5 into 1 by 9. We know 1 by 9 is 11.11%. So we have a 55.55%. Now, if you compare alpha and bravo, which one of them is closest to half? Obviously, 55.55 is closer to half. So you can rule out option A. Now, 6 by 11. 6 by 11 is 6 into 1 by 11. Therefore, this is 6 into 9.09%. That's equal to 54.54%. Now, between Bravo and Charlie, you're asking yourself which one of these is closer to 50%. Clearly, 54.54 is closer, so you can rule out option B. Now, 7 by 13. 7 by 13 would be 7 into 1 by 13. That is nothing but 7 into 7.7. 7 sevens are 49. 7 sevens are 49 plus 4, 53. So 53.9% you can rule out Charlie. 9 by 16 will be 9 into 6, 9 into 1 by 16, which is 9 into 6.25%, which gives me 9 5s are 45, 9 2s are 18 plus 4, 22, 9 6s are 54 plus 2, 56. Out of these two, clearly this is closer to 50%. The correct answer is D for delta. So knowing the fraction percentage equivalents is a great way of approximating, especially on problems related to fractions and percentages and even decimals. Like for example, if you want to convert this to a decimal, you know 50% is nothing but 0.5. So this table will not only help you on problems on percentages, but also on fractions, decimals, and therefore it will help you in areas wherever these are applied. Areas like profit and loss, or simple interest, compound interest, or maybe in problems on numbers, right? Now, as the last part of the pre-work, exponents, right? Powers, squares, square roots, cubes, cube roots, and so on. So for example, if I ask you, what is the square root of 2209? Okay, very simple question. I'll give you the options. 38, 43, typically this won't happen on a GMAT question, so I'll give you. So without having actually to find the square root, if you had to approximate and find the answer here, what would your answer be? Okay, interesting. C. All right, I just hope that you have not calculated actually and given me the answer C. Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. So this is probably where you need to know certain squares well. So there are certain techniques. All right. There are certain techniques, shortcut techniques from Vedic math, which will help you find the squares of some easy numbers. For example, if you have a number that ends with 0, okay, let's say I have a number that ends with 0 like this, x0. I square this, I will always get a number that ends with 20, and the other part will be x square, right? We know this. So for example, 30 whole square. So x is nothing but 3. So 30 whole square is 9 and a 0, 0. Right? Now 40 square would be 4 square 16 and a 0, 0. So therefore, like 50 square would be 5 square 25 and a 0, 0. So if I have 110 square, okay, now x becomes 11. The entire 11 is x. So 11 square is 121. So 12,100. Okay, so this is one technique. Why is this useful? This is useful in our estimation because if you observe 2209, if you take the square root of 2209, okay, what will be the last digit of the number based on your knowledge of squares? If you have a perfect square ending with 9, what will be the last digit of the square root? You would utilize your knowledge of squares to answer this question. Okay, so it will be 3 or 7, right? Now, this is where the approximation comes in. So 2209, I know is in between 1600 and 2500, correct? I know that this is 40 square and I know that this is 50 square. Therefore, the square root of 2209 should be either a 43 or a 47. 53 ruled out, 67 ruled out, 38 ruled out. 38 because it is below 40, 53 and 67 because they are above 50. Now after this, what do I do? You ask. You don't have to calculate. How do you figure out whether it's 43 or 47? You just have to figure out the distance. Is 2209 closer to 2500 or is it closer to 1600? It's obviously closer to 2500, which means the square root has to be 47, not 43. So this is one way in which you can approximate when it comes to squares, square roots, cubes, cube roots. So if I give you this example, another example, if I ask you to find the cube root, right, of let's say 4096. You'll follow a very similar approach. You know that 1000 is a very easy number for you to look at. 1000 is 10 cube, right? 10 cube is 1000. You have a 4096. You have a 20 cube. 20 cube is 8000. So you know your 4096, the cube root has to be in between 10 and 20. And from your knowledge of cubes, you know that the cube root of 4096 will always end with yes, please. 6, correct? And between 10 and 20, there's only one number which ends with a 6, that is a 16. Clear here, guys? So we're actually utilizing our knowledge of squares to find out the square roots. We are utilizing our knowledge of cubes to find out the cube roots. Another situation I can think of is, for example, if I say the area of an equilateral triangle is, let's say, 10 square units, okay, and I want to find the perimeter. Now I know the perimeter of the equilateral triangle is 3 times of the side. So if I want to find the perimeter, I'll have to find the side. but I don't know the side, I know the area of an equilateral triangle. Now I know, okay, let me take the side as, let the side be A, just to make it simple for us. Now I know the area of an equilateral triangle is root 3 by 4 into A square. This is probably where you need to know the value of the roots. The value of root 2 is 1.414. The value of root 3 is 1.732. And the value of root 5, I think, is taken as 2.216. I take it as 2.21. Okay. So root 3 by 4 A square equal to 10. So if I want to find out the side, I'll have to cross multiply. A square will be equal to 40 by root 3. Now, what do I do here? One thing that we can do is we can multiply and divide by a root 3 so that we will make the denominator as a rational number. But when we are multiplying and dividing by root 3, we are not changing the value, right? So this is 40 into root 3 upon 3. Okay. Now, here is where I approximate. 40 into root 3 will be 40 into 1.7. I will rule out the 3, 2 because they are small. 40 into 1.7 will give me 68. 68 by 3 will give me approximately 23. So I know A square is approximately 23. So what will be the value of A? The value of A will be approximately about 4.7 or 4.8. Remember, we just said 47 square is 2209, correct? So therefore, square root of 2300 will be in between 47 to 48. It will probably be closer to 48. So let me take it as 4.8. Okay, so this is the kind of approximation that you should be able to do. So if the side is 4.8, this will be approximately about 14.5. Clear with these? Any questions at this stage? All right. So you have to understand, I mean, just because the name of the webinar is learning the art of approximation for problem solving, approximation is not entirely an art, right? There's a saying that medicine is an art and engineering is a science. I tend to disagree with it, right? There is always going to be a scientific backing to any art, okay? Now, if you look at the mathematical techniques that you use in approximation, it's a pure science, right? And without knowing those mathematical techniques, like without knowing how to convert from a decimal to a fraction, or without knowing how to convert from a percentage to a fraction, or without knowing those squaring techniques and cubing techniques, you'll be lost. Approximation will not look like an art then. It will look artless, right? So it's very necessary to know the mathematical techniques. That is the science behind the art. But deciding when to approximate and what kind of questions you have to approximate or estimate, that's an art. I agree with that. And that's an art that will take time for you to kind of perfect. You'll take months sometimes. Sometimes it happens within weeks. I can't have a single answer which says, okay, you will take these many days to perfect the art. But if you want to achieve a certain level of perfection in the art of approximating, you'll have to know the mathematical techniques. You'll also have to have solved enough questions to understand when to approximate and when not to approximate. That becomes the art. So in my opinion, my belief is that the art is backed by the science element here. And the art cannot survive without the science. I also believe that approximation will come in handy for you in problem solving more than data sufficiency. Okay? Because when you solve a data sufficiency question, your mindset is not to go for the exact answer, because GMAT has already made it very clear. It says, okay, in data sufficiency, we don't expect an exact answer. So your mindset will always say, okay, I don't have to go for an exact answer here, so let me approximate. That'll come naturally to you on DS. But in PS, in problem solving, a lot of test takers face this bias where they try to find the exact answer as though they were a computer or a calculator. Remember, you're human beings, you're smart human beings, and you're not expected to be a computer or a calculator. And that is the reason why the approximation techniques that we discussed today are probably a little more relevant for problem solving than data sufficiency. Because in data sufficiency, we don't require the exact answer anyways, right? And therefore, when it comes to problem solving, approximation can be a boon by helping you save time and effort. So let's solve a few questions now. Let's see how the pre-work that we have done over the last 35-40 minutes, how we can apply that pre-work in some questions, some nice questions that I've picked up from GMAT Club. These are, of course, modeled on official questions. So you know for a fact that either the same question or a similar question actually came on the GMAT and was retired. Okay, so let's start with the first question. The first question is on fractions. On every question here, I'll give you a minute and a half. All right, minute and a half, 90 seconds. Okay, starting now. Yeah, you can go ahead. If you got an answer within 1.5 minutes, hold on and post the answer only when I ask you to. So you can now post your answers. Delta seems to be one popular answer. Okay, Delta. I got a couple of deltas. Any other answers? Delta again. Okay. All right. So when you're dealing with fractions, if you have like, let's say you have two fractions, 11 by 13, and let's say 16 by 17. How do you compare? If you have two fractions, the best way of comparing is by cross multiplying. You cross multiply this with this number, the numerator with the denominator with the numerator. Okay, all right. 11 into 17 is 187. 13 into 16 is 208. Now, whichever fraction is on the side of the bigger number is 208, right? Whichever fraction is on the side of the bigger number, that will be the bigger fraction. Okay? That is when you have two fractions. But here, you can't do that. You can't go about comparing two fractions at a time. There are 5 of them. Okay? So I would eliminate a few options here. Observe 2 cube and 5 square is common to Charlie and Echo. Option C and option E have a 2 cube and a 5 square. You have to understand, if the denominator is common, higher the numerator, higher is the fraction. So the biggest fraction here will be 7 by 2 and the smallest fraction will be 1 by 2. So we know the denominator is common and we know 12 is more than 1. So definitely option E is not the largest. It's actually probably the smallest. Now we are left with option Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. We will follow the same approach. What is the same approach? Make the denominator the same. Once we make the denominator the same, it becomes very easy for us to deal with the numerator. But how do we make the denominator the same? The denominators are different. We have a 2 square 5 cube. We have a 2 power 5, 5 power 3. We have a 2 cube 5 square. We have a 2 cube 5 cube. what should we do to make the denominator common? Yes, people. Divide and multiply by what, Anil? We should first find out the LCM of these numbers, right? These are the numbers in the denominator. We'll have to find out the LCM of these numbers. What is the LCM of these numbers? The LCM of these numbers is 2 power 5 into 5 power 3. Do we all agree on this? The least common multiple of these numbers has to be 2 power 5 and 5 power 3, right? So we have a 28 by a 2 square into 5 cube. Now I don't have a 2 power 5 here, so what should I multiply this with? I should multiply this with a 2 cube. If I multiplied the denominator by a 2 cube, I'll also have to multiply the numerator by a 2 cube, right? So 28 into 8, 28 into 8 is 8 8 is 64, 224, correct? Denominator will be 2 power 5 into 5 cube. Second number, I think we already have 244 by 2 power 5 5 cube. We'll just keep it as it is. When we compare alpha and Bravo, we understand the numerator is smaller here. So alpha is definitely not the greatest. Next, option C, 12 by 2 cube into 5 square. What should I multiply here? I should multiply 2 square and a 5. So 2 square and a 5. Okay, so this is the denominator anyways is 2 power 5 into 5 cube. 12 into 5, 60, 60 into 4, that is 20. 240. 240 is smaller than 244, so rule out Charlie. 62 by 2 cube into 5 cube, which is nothing but, we'll have to multiply this with a 2 square. So 62 into 2 square by 2 power 5, 5 power 3. 62 into 4 will be 248. So option delta is the correct answer. Bravo gets eliminated. So when you're comparing fractions, a very good method is to make all the denominators same so that you can work with the numerators. And making the denominators same is best done by taking the LCM of all the denominators. Clear on this? Any issues here? Any doubts? Okay, all right. Let's go to the next question then. Question number 2. One minute. Okay, C for Charlie. Why am I not surprised by C for Charlie? Because I expected it. E for Echo. Why am I not surprised again? People, you'll have to understand that any two primes, right, will always be co-prime to each other. What are co-prime numbers? Co-prime numbers are two numbers that will not have a common factor except 1. Any two numbers whose highest common factor is 1 are called co-prime numbers. And if you take two prime numbers, it's very obvious that the only common factor that they share is 1. So they are bound to be co-prime. And you also have to understand the LCM of co-prime numbers is equal to their product. So therefore, if one of your numbers is A, one of your prime numbers is A, the other prime number is B, you know that your LCM will be AB, right? Therefore, if you look at the denominator, you have to look at getting the 77 as a product of two prime numbers. Okay, so if I say AB equal to 77, that's only possible by 7 into 11. But 1 by 7 plus 1 by 11 will be what? 77 denominator. This will be 11 plus 7. That is 18 by 77. Do we have 18 by 77 here? No, we don't. Now, can we get a 50 as a product of two prime numbers? Absolutely impossible. Why? Because 50 is even. Delta is out. Can we get a 30 as a product of two prime numbers? Impossible. Out. 13. Can we get a 13 as a product of two prime numbers? Impossible, because 13 itself is prime. You can't write a prime number as one prime number into another prime number. So 13 is out. The only answer left is 10 by 12. And what has confused a lot of you is the fact that 10 by 12 is not in its simplest form. It's not in its simplified form. 10 by 12 is actually 5 by 6 when you simplify it. Can you write 6 as a product of two prime numbers? Absolutely. 2 into 3. So what is 1 by 2 plus 1 by 3? 1 by 2 plus 1 by 3 is nothing but 5 by 6. So 10 by 12 is the answer here. Most of you fell for the trap. And the trap is the fraction here is not expressed in its simplest form. Okay, so you had to bring in your knowledge of prime numbers here, and you had to use a little bit of elimination strategy here to be able to rule out most wrong answers. After that, you had to estimate based on your knowledge of fractions. Doubts here? Any doubts or queries? Okay, let's go to question number 3 then. Again, I'll give you 1.5 minutes here. Although I feel it's a little bit of an overkill, I will still give you 1 minute 30 seconds. Okay, delta, a slew of deltas coming up. As expected, probably a slew of deltas. I see a solitary Charlie. That's where most of you forgot that approximation does not mean that you ballpark your answers all the time, right? All the time doesn't work. Yes, sometimes you ballpark your answer, it works. But when the answers are very close, you have a 10 power 6 and a 10 power 7. When the answers are close, your approximation should be smarter. You'll have to take care of everything. The first thing I would do here is the product of all the prime numbers less than 20. I would write down all the prime numbers less than 20. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19. Now I know a 2 and a 5 would give me a 10, so that's a 10. I know a 3 and a 7 will give me a 21, which is nothing but a 2.1 into a 10. So I got one more 10 here. I cannot ignore the 2.1. I can't behave as if it doesn't exist, right? Now each of these numbers will end up giving us a 10, 10 into 1.1, 10 into 1.3, 10 into 1.7, 10 into 1.9, right? Now, clearly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is probably the reason why 10 power 6 is such a popular answer on this, and most often popular answers are trap answers. That's because a lot of you failed to realize the importance of the other numbers left out, right? Now, a 2.1 into a 1.9 right? If you approximate a 2.1 into 1.9, okay, it's approximately 4, correct? Now, if you approximate a 1.3 into a 1.1, right? 1.3 into 1.1, 13 into 11 is 143. So approximately about 1 point, let's say 45, okay? And when you multiply 4 into 1.45, you get approximately a 6. And when you multiply a 6 with a 1.7, you will end up getting a 10.2. That's why the answer here is C for Charlie. This is where you have to approximate, right? If you left out this approximation, it's obvious that you would fall for the trap. So do not ignore numbers. Approximation does not mean that you ignore the other numbers just because you're looking for powers of 10. Remember, you're dealing with a product. So you can't just ignore 2.1, 1.1 and say, okay, they will anyways not give me a 10. You don't know. After all, a 2 into 2 into 2 just 3 times brings you closer to a 10. That's where this word makes a lot of difference. It's asking you which is closest to the power following powers of 10. Is it closer to 10 power 6? I don't think so, right? Because it is much closer to 10 power 7, because all these numbers when multiplied will bring you closer to another 10. Questions here? Any doubts? Or only disappointments? Okay, all right. Okay, question number 4. A very, very popular question. Okay, so I would give you all like 2 minutes before I start off discussing this. Slightly harder question. So I'd want to wait, give you time, and then take a call. Go ahead. 2 minutes. All right, that's 2 minutes, people. You can mark your answers now, please. Many of you may have seen this question already on a lot of the recent OGs, and even on GMAT Club is a very popular question. All right, no answers. That's interesting. So when you have a question like these where you feel the numbers are overwhelming in some ways, right? You'll have to find a pattern. Take a smaller number and then see how to extrapolate that to the actual number given, right? You'll also have to bring in your knowledge of fractions. Remember 0.01. What is 0.01? 0.01 is nothing but 1 by 100. 1 by 100 can be written as 1 into 10 power minus 2. Correct? Similarly, 0.99, okay, can be written as 1 minus 0.01. That's one way of writing it. 0.9999 can be written as 1 minus 0.0001. This is the thing I was talking of. You need to develop a pattern here. Okay. So therefore, tell me how many nines are there here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have a 0.9999, 9999. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This will be 1 minus 1 into 10 power minus 8. Right? This is 1 into 10 power minus 2. Sorry, this is 1 minus 1 into 10 power minus 2. This is 1 minus 1 into 10 power minus 4. So similarly, this is 1 minus 1 into 10 power minus 8. So it just depends on the number of 9s. Now tell me, this is in the form of 1 square minus 1 into 10 power minus 4 whole square. It's in the form of a square minus b square. A square minus b square is nothing but a plus b into a minus b. So this is a plus b into a minus b divided by, what is this number? 1.0001. 1.0001 is nothing but 1 plus 1 into 10 power minus 4. What happens here? We can cancel off 1 plus 1 into 10 power minus 4. Okay. Similarly, on the other hand, we have, let's say, 0.99999991. So what is this? This is nothing but 1 minus 3 into 10 power minus 8. 9 into 10 power minus 8, sorry. Okay? Because you have subtracted 9. So this will be nothing but 1 square minus 3 into 10 power minus 4 whole square. A square minus b square. So a plus b into a minus b. Denominator, what do we have? Denominator, we have 1 plus 3 into 10 power minus 4. So you can cancel this off. So what do we have now? Our final number is 1 minus 1 into 10 power minus 4 minus of 1 minus 3 into 10 power minus 4. Right? Now 1 minus 1 gets cancelled. Minus of minus 3 becomes plus 3. Plus 3 minus 1 becomes plus 2. So 2 into 10 power minus 4 becomes your final answer. That is option D for delta. So this is an official 700 level question, wherein if you don't know the approximation methods of converting a decimal to a fraction, you know you're in trouble. Okay? And if you can't work out a pattern like this, you again know you're in trouble. So when you have a large number like this, don't get overwhelmed, don't get overawed. Try to work from a smaller number, try to build a pattern, and once the pattern is built, you'll be able to deal with the actual number much easily. Clear on this? Okay. All right. Question number 5. So we now move on to word problems. And because this is a word problem, I will give you 2 minutes on this. You will require time to go through the statements and come up with a strategy. So 2 minutes. All right, people, that's 2 minutes. You can now post your answers, please. Okay, delta, echo. Any other answers? Okay, so here's where it makes a lot of difference in the number that you assume for January, right? A lot of times, a generic piece of advice is given out by a lot of, teachers, where they say, okay, if you see a percentage, just take 100 as a reference value. That's generic advice according to me, right? You'll have to, the value that you pick should help you solve the question. And you can't have a generic idea saying, okay, I see a percentage, I'll take 100. Okay, especially if there are so many percentage changes, you know, you have to deal with so many decimals, and dealing with decimals is never a good idea. Even if you are approximating well, you should always try to avoid decimals as much as you can, right? So what I'll do is I'll take January as 10,000. Okay. Now February will be how much? 10% of 10,000 is a very easy number to calculate. What is 10% of 10,000? 1,000. So February will be 11,000. Now in March, 15% less. So 10% of 11,000 is how much? 10% of 11,000 is 1,100. If 10% of 11,000 is 1,100, 5% will be how much? Half of this 550. So that will be 1,650. So what should we do from this? Should we add it to this or should we subtract? We should subtract because it says 15% less. So 11,000 minus 1,650. 50. This will be 93, 9,350. See how fast it is. You don't have to break a sweat here. In May, in April, okay, 20% greater. What is 10% of 9,350? 935 into 2. That's it. 2 5s are 10, 2 3s are 6, 7, 2 9s are 18. You add 1,870 here. 0, 12, 12, 11, 11,220. But what happened in May? In May, it is 10% less. What is 10% of this? Very simple. 1, 1, 2, 2. 10 minus 2, 8. 11 minus 2, 9. 0. 10,098. Right? 10,098. What is happening in June? Is it increasing or is it decreasing? Sorry, this is June, not April. What is happening in June? Is this value increasing much further or decreasing? It's increasing, which means it will move away from 10,000, correct? So you don't even have to calculate June because you know this will go far away from 10,000. Whereas we are trying to find out which number is closest to 10,000. Clearly, the answer is delta. So what numbers you assume, especially in percentage problems, fractions problems, is also important. It's a very important part of your estimation skills. You can't be one-dimensional, saying, okay, I will always assume 100 if I see percentages. It's good to assume different multiples of 100 to suit the situation. If you have too many percentage changes, I will always recommend that you assume a bigger number like 1,000 or 10,000 or 5,000, because if there are multiple percentage changes, you will eventually get into decimals if you take a smaller number. When you take a larger number, the possibility of getting into decimals is smaller. Clear? Let's move to question number 6. Okay, question number 6. All right, it's almost 5:30 people, so I think I will skip this question. I'll probably give this out as a homework. You can probably solve it at home. I will skip this question. Let me come to question number 7, and let me give you 1.5 minutes to solve this question. Go ahead, 1.5 minutes. All right, people, that's 1.5 minutes. You can post your answers now. This is a brilliant question which tests your estimation skills and your approximation skills and a little bit of your common mathematical sense also, right? And because it's also a question on sequences, it's important, it's very important that you at least write out the first 3-4 terms, right? Now, term 1, according to this problem, that is k equal to 1, term 1 will be minus 1 to the power of 2 multiplied by 1 to the 1 by 2 to the power of 1, right? We know minus 1 to the power of 2 is 1 into 1 by 2, that is half. So we know the very first term is half. If we put k equal to 2, we'll get the second term, but the second term will be minus 1 to the power of 3, because k equal to 2, this will be 1 by 4. So it will be minus 1 by 4. So just by looking at the first two terms, we understand that the first two terms are 1 by 2 and 1 by 4, which means we are subtracting something from half. Clearly, the other terms will be smaller. The next term will be 1 by 8. It's not hard for you to estimate. It is 1 by 8. The next term will be 1 by 16. Forget the other terms. I know you're trying to find the sum of the first 10 terms. I know that. But let's forget about them for a moment. Focus on the first 4 terms. What is the value of the first 2 terms? 1 by 2 minus 1 by 4 gives us what? So 1 by 2 minus 1 by 4 gives us a 1 by 4, right? Now, 1 by 8 minus 1 by 16 gives us 1 by 16. Is 1 by 16 a large number or a fairly small number? 1 by 16 is exactly 0.06. Exactly, that's the point. And therefore, your number, how can it be greater than 2? How can it be greater than 2? If you're adding a small number like 0.06, are you telling me that all these numbers will add up to 2? Impossible. And that is where option Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Echo, all of them get eliminated in one shot. For people here who might be thinking, okay, is this like a scam or something? No, why is it a scam? No. Here the value will be 1 by 64. 1 by 64 is like 0.0, another 0, another 0, and then something like a 6 or something. And you add all these numbers, you are never going to get anywhere closer to half. Forget getting closer to 1, you'll not even be closer to half. Right? That is where your estimation skills, more than your estimation skills, that is where I think your common sense should have worked. Don't take me wrong, I'm not trying to offend you, but common sense is a very integral part of doing well on the GMAT. You should have written down the first 4 terms. You should have figured out, okay, the first term itself is half, and I'm subtracting something from it. How can it be more than half? Okay, so the correct answer here is D for delta. All right, people, skipping question number 8. I put this here as a means of telling you that it's not only direct approximation problems that you should try to estimate. There are so many word problems where you can estimate. Because I'm running out of time, I'll probably skip this question and get directly to my challenger question. Yeah. So I'll give you 1 minute 30 seconds on this. This is the last question for today. 1 minute 30 seconds. I want all of you to be smart and approximate smartly. 1 minute 30 seconds. Okay, people, that's a minute and 30 seconds. Time to mark your answers, please. It's very important in this question to realize that the square is outside the square bracket. The power of 2 is outside. It applies to the whole bracket, right? So we'll have to first understand that the denominator itself is a root. It's an irrational number. So if you have to remove the root from the denominator, we do what is called as the rationalization of the denominator. How do we rationalize? We multiply and divide by the conjugate. So if the root is a minus root b, the conjugate of this will be a plus root b. So when we multiply by the conjugate, we are able to write this as a square minus b, because they are in the form of a minus b into a plus b, right? Now here, remember, this is the number given to you, okay? In a GMAT question, in the denominator, if you have a root and you rationalize it, you know it will most often give you 1, right? 4 square is 16, root 15 square is 15. You know for sure that your denominator is definitely 1. But what do you have in the numerator? In the numerator, you have something in the form of a plus b the whole square. Now, a plus b the whole square will be a square plus b square plus 2ab. It will not have a minus, so option delta and option bravo can be eliminated. Now, here, I don't want to calculate the whole thing. A square will be 16, b square will be 15. So I know I'll have to have a 31. The moment I know I have a 31, option E is ruled out, option A is ruled out, option C is the correct answer. Never go for the exact answer all the time. Even in problem solving questions, you have an opportunity to like abort at a stage where you know what the answer definitely is going to be. Stop, save a few seconds. Even a couple of seconds saved on every question will give you 60 seconds, because the entire section has 30 questions. If you save 2 seconds per question, just by not going for the final answer, you will end up saving 1 minute. And that's the beauty of being able to approximate, estimate, and being smart. So I hope this session was useful for some of you at least. For those of you who liked this session and found some sort of a value in this session, we would urge you, we would implore you to go and check out our live at home course. These sessions happen on the weekends. These are full-fledged sessions where we cover concepts, strategies, and formulas and problems. If you would like to enroll into our live at home course, please go and look up for it. I'll just paste a link in the chat box. And we are also coming up with a new product for the upcoming year 2021. We would also like to have a fresh start. All of us like to have a fresh start. 2020 has not been a great year. So you can actually enroll into this micro course. We call this as a micro course. This is a video series. You don't have to pay anything for this. It's a 4-part video series. Please enroll and go through the course. And I'm sure you'll find a lot of value in this course. Again, I'll copy paste the link in the chat box. Please take it down. Visit our website and enroll into the micro course. We are also on social media. We are very active: Facebook, YouTube, Insta, LinkedIn. Take care till then. Please stay safe. And I'll see you on the next webinar next year.